It's time. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to the War Room. Welcome to another edition of the Front Office Podcast. I am your host, Pistols, and today, as you see, we are finally getting to our tier system. We're going to start with the running backs. I appreciate y'all for being here. We are on episode 23, rolling right along here. I know it's the off season. I know fantasy football is probably not gearing up quite yet, but this is where we prepare. This is where we win in the off season and thinking about the draft season and having a tier system. Now, I want you guys to know the tier system. This is not a list, okay? This is a role-based system that I came up with. Whether you agree with it or not, it's totally fine. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you stick around in this episode long enough to watch and listen to hear what I have to say. But this is a role-based list in their specific offenses. Every tier represents how a player should be used in your draft strategy, okay? We finally get there after all the philosophy stuff that I talk about. I know there have been some people out there that have been waiting for my tier list, and here it is. And today we start with the running backs. The running back position is the first up on the list, okay? And we're going to get right into it. Tier 1. Tier 1 are your foundation pieces. The foundation of an offense, the offense that runs through these players, the offense that creates the most fantasy points, the highest ceilings of all the running backs in the league. Okay. I only have 4 names in here, and I'm going to explain why I have these guys in this tier. Tier 1 are your foundation pieces, as I mentioned. Your Bijan Robinson, your Christian McCaffrey, your Jahmyr Gibbs, and your De'Von Achane. Now, I know De'Von Achane is probably going to be the one that people question and people are going to wonder why I put him in here. Here's why. The Miami Dolphins, they got rid of their quarterback, okay? They cut Tua Tagovailoa. He goes down to Atlanta, which we're going to talk about when we get to Bijan Robinson. But De'Von Achane has become the focal point of the Miami Dolphins offense. And now that they have Malik Willis as their quarterback, new head coaching system, whole offense has changed. They traded Jalen Waddle to the Denver Broncos. De'Von Achane is the focal point of the Miami Dolphins offense, which is why I put him in tier 1, because he catches the ball out of the backfield. He rushes the ball like crazy. He ended with like 1,350 yards rushing last year. I don't have, let's see if I can get his receiving stats. I gotta dig pretty deep into the list. Anyway, we're looking at the rushing offense. De'Von Achane is a tier 1 player. Okay. He's probably a first round pick. If I were to guess, coming up in fantasy drafts when draft season kicks off. But De'Von Achane is going to be the focal point of that offense. He's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's going to be relied on heavily. Now, Jalen Wright is their backup. He showed some flashes, but that's all he is a backup. De'Von Achane is the focal point of the Miami Dolphins offense right now. They've decided to move on from Tua. They're no longer building their team around the quarterback. They're building it around their running back and De'Von Achane. That is why I put him in tier 1. Your other guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson. These are offenses that rely heavily on their running back position. Okay, the San Francisco 49ers especially. Christian McCaffrey is that offense. Now, yes, they have George Kittle at tight end. They have Brock Purdy as their quarterback, but Christian McCaffrey is the driving force for that offense. He catches everything out of the backfield. He rushes everything out of the backfield. He ended up with 1,200 yards rushing and probably 400, 500, 600 yards receiving. Christian McCaffrey is by far a top tier running back in the league. Now, what does that say about the rest of the league? Well, the rest of the league, yes, they all have starting running backs. Every team in the league has starting running back. But Christian McCaffrey is the driving force for that offense. I also have Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson up here. Very similar players, guys that are very good out of the backfield, run the ball very, very well. Bijan Robinson ended with like just under 1,500 yards rushing, and Jahmyr Gibbs ended with 1,200. But these are the guys, these are the focal points of their said offenses. I know that the Falcons are now in a little bit of a QB competition with Tua and Michael Penix. But in my opinion, Tua wins that job. And just like he did in Miami, relied heavily on the running back position. And Bijan Robinson fits that bill. He is very, very good at catching the ball out of the backfield. He's very good at making guys miss. He's very good running the ball. Look for the Atlanta Falcons and Bijan Robinson. He's probably going to be a first-round pick. There's no question about it. All these guys are probably first-round picks. But Bijan Robinson, to me, is the absolute focal point of the Falcons offense. I know they have Drake London. I know they have Kyle Pitts. But for their offense to run smoothly, they have to run the ball. Same with the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs, very good at catching the ball out of the backfield and very, very good at running the ball. He's a very quick, speedy back. I know when David Montgomery was there, they had the nickname of Sonic and Knuckles. David Montgomery being your Knuckles, your bigger back, your beat 'em up kind of guy. Now they replaced him with Isaiah Pacheco, who I'm not really worried about to steal any time from Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is their driving force. He's still Sonic. He's fast. He's shifty. He's agile. He can make you miss. And above all, that is going to be the driving force of the Lions offense. The driving force of the Falcons offense is Bijan Robinson, and you got Devin Achane and Christian McCaffrey as the focal points of their said offenses on their respective teams. Those are the only four guys I have in tier 1. In tier 2, we have system drivers. We have guys that the offense doesn't necessarily feed off of the running back position, but it is a huge part of their offense. We have guys, and here's my tier 2 list. We have Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Ashton Jeanty, Omarion Hampton, and this one might shock everybody, Breece Hall. I know the Jets are bad. I know they've been bad for a little while, but they have issues at quarterback. They get Geno Smith back in the offseason. Geno Smith was a very, very big factor in the success that Kenneth Walker had over in Seattle. Now he is on the Kansas City Chiefs, and Kenneth Walker is going to be a very good back. He's in a high-powered offense, but back to Breece Hall. Breece Hall is going to be the driving force of that offense. Yes, they have Garrett Wilson, but they need to figure out where Geno Smith is going to rank and where he's going to fall in the quarterback list. If they can figure some stuff out on offense, but they're going to need Breece Hall to be special. Like I said, these are guys that their offense kind of they don't fully revolve around the running back position, but they're a huge part of the offense. Now, some might argue because James Cook led the league in rushing yards, and you might think that the Buffalo Bills have a really good rushing attack. Yes, they did. But they also have Josh Allen as their quarterback, which is why I dropped James Cook down to tier 2, because their offense doesn't revolve around him. When you have a guy like Josh Allen throwing the ball, okay? Josh Allen is the focal point of the offense. He is their main weapon. He can throw the ball. He can run the ball. You always have to keep that in mind. And with James Cook in the backfield, their offense can click on all cylinders, okay? James Cook falls into tier 2 because, yes, even though he had the rushing title, he won it over Derrick Henry, he won it over Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Devin Achane, all these things. But again, this is not a ranking list. This is a tier list on where the opportunity comes for the offense and where these guys fit into the tier ranking list. James Cook is a very, very good running back. But again, the focal point of the offense, yes, they're going to run the ball heavily, but they also have really good running backs behind him. But Josh Allen ultimately runs that offense. It is not driven by James Cook. It is run by Josh Allen. Omarion Hampton is another one that I had on this list. And I put him on there because the Chargers are an interesting team because, yes, they have Justin Herbert. Great quarterback. He has the arm talent. He's a big body guy. He has the ability to get outside the pocket. Really, his wide receivers are Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey. Okay. With those guys on the outside, most teams are going to focus on them. Justin Herbert is going to focus on them. They want to get back to their pass-heavy offense that they have already. Omarion Hampton can fit into that to relieve some of the pressure on Justin Herbert, to relieve some of the pressure on those wide receivers, to get those guys open. Omarion Hampton is a system driver. And that's why I have tier 2 listed as that, is that he can come into the system as he's already been there. And I know we saw him get hurt last year, and his stats kind of wavered because of that. He didn't quite make 1,000 yards because of the injury, but he's a very, very good running back. He has all the explosiveness in the world. He could really be the focal point of their offense. Ashton Jeanty is another one that people are probably going to be really surprised that I put in tier 2. The reason I put him in tier 2 is because they come in with a rookie quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. They drafted in the 2026 draft. They have Brock Bowers, but they don't have the wide receivers that anybody's ever heard of. Trey Tucker's still there, sure. He's a speedy guy on the outside. He can break one deep every now and again. But for a rookie quarterback to come in, and I'm pretty sure they signed Kirk Cousins, so maybe we see Kirk Cousins kind of start the year and then Mendoza come in later on. But even so, whoever is their starting quarterback week 1, we're going to see Ashton Jeanty, who was incredibly explosive in college. He ran for over 2,000 yards at Boise State. He kind of had his rookie season wasn't as great as everybody thought it was going to be. He ended up with like 1,100 yards or something like that. Just kidding, under 1,000, just under 1,000 at 975 yards. But he's a great explosive running back, and with the rookie coming in, with their offensive identity kind of up in the air still, with the new head coach coming in Clint Kubiak, we're going to see Ashton Jeanty drive this offense. They needed to. They drafted their franchise quarterback of the future. Whether we see him start week 1 or not, it doesn't matter. Either way, they're going to rely heavily on Ashton Jeanty, which is why I put him in tier 2, and you should not be afraid of drafting him whatsoever. Other guys I have in there, like I said, Breece Hall, Omarion Hampton, James Cook, Ashton Jeanty. Kenneth Walker comes over from Seattle. He is in the Kansas City backfield now, where we didn't really see them run the ball a whole lot. Of course, when you have Patrick Mahomes back there throwing to Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, you kind of lose the running back position a little bit. But Kenneth Walker comes in, and Kansas City is a very high-powered offense, especially with Andy Reid running the show. Regardless of who's on the field, if Mahomes isn't ready week 1 because of his injury that happened super late in the season, Kenneth Walker is going to be the driving force of that offense as well. Travis Kelce, we see get another year older. He's 35 years old. We had a down season last year, and of course, we saw the whole tight end position as a whole across the league have a down year, minus Trey McBride out of Arizona, which we'll get to Arizona later on. But for the most part, Kenneth Walker could really come in here, and he kind of solidified his role as a workhorse running back in Seattle. He was very healthy last year. We saw Zach Charbonnet go down with injuries, so Kenneth Walker really solidified his role as a starting running back. He won the Super Bowl MVP with his 135-yard rushing total in that game. We saw that he was able to carry a full workload. I expect the same thing in Kansas City. Andy Reid, I know that they have Patrick Mahomes and they're going to be a pass-heavy offense, but having a guy like Kenneth Walker in the backfield, he's really going to help drive that offense. He's going to help. Kenneth Walker can only help open up the field for those receivers, whether it's Justin Fields starting in the absence of Mahomes if he's not ready for the beginning of the season. But for the most part, Kenneth Walker there, that's why he falls into tier 2. He's borderline tier 1, to be honest with you. I thought about putting him in tier 1 just solely based on the Mahomes injury, and they're really going to rely heavily on that. But he falls into tier 2. And we have Derrick Henry in tier 2 as well. The Baltimore Ravens kind of lost their identity a little bit towards the end of the season there. We saw them miss the playoffs for the first time since Lamar Jackson's been their quarterback. But again, these are guys that are system drivers, yes, but that offense in Baltimore runs through Lamar Jackson, whether he's going to run the ball, whether he's going to throw the ball. But they still have Derrick Henry. Now, Derrick Henry is an anomaly when it comes to running backs because he's a big body guy. He doesn't show any signs of slowing down, regardless of him being in year, however many years he's been in the league already. He's up there in age. He's in his, he's like 33, 34 years old. But a guy like that who doesn't show any signs of wear and tear, they really needed to kind of focus on that. And we saw that kind of late in the season. He had a 4-touchdown game towards the end there when they were getting ready to try and make a push to the playoffs. Again, ultimately, they ended up not making the playoffs. But Derrick Henry is that system driver. He's that guy that teams have to worry about. Now, we're not looking at like 1,800 yards like he used to get when he was younger. But you're still over that 1,000-yard mark. You're still over... you're still looking at that touchdown, maybe not so much dependent, but King Henry, yes, your dreams, appreciate you for being here. Derrick Henry is one of the most consistent running backs in the league. He's going to get you touchdowns. He's going to get you yards. And whether he carries the ball 20 times, whether he carries the ball 30 times, it doesn't matter. The yards are going to be there. The touchdowns are going to be there, which is why he falls into tier 2, and solely because of that Lamar Jackson kind of running the show there. And you'll have to wait to the QB tier list when we get to that point. But Derrick Henry falls into tier 2. Now, another one that might shock you too is I have Saquon Barkley. Derrick Henry and Drake May are great keepers. Drake May had a great season. Now his schedule gets a little bit harder this year. Dreams, you got to be aware of that. They're going to be on the first place schedule as opposed to the fourth place schedule. But Derrick Henry, you're right. He's been so consistent throughout the league, throughout his career in the NFL. And a guy like that, there's no signs of slowing down. Like I said, Saquon Barkley falls into tier 2 for me as well. The Philadelphia Eagles, their identity kind of wavered a little bit too. We saw Saquon Barkley have a 2,000-yard season. Last year, he barely broke 1,000 yards. He had like 1,100 or so. About 1,140 yards. I'm looking at the stats here. So Saquon Barkley, to me, obviously he's elite. He's a fantastic running back. They call him Quadzilla, right? He's got incredible strength in his lower body, but because of that identity failure there a little bit towards the season, especially with AJ Brown kind of chirping his talk and coming in here going, I need the ball, even though they won like 13 games last year. It didn't matter. He wasn't getting involved enough. So they kind of relied a little bit more on the passing game from Jalen Hurts. We saw the tush push at an all-time low last year. They didn't really have too many opportunities there. But again, that's a team that knows what they're doing. They probably have one of the best GMs in the league, to be honest with you. But Saquon Barkley to me falls into tier 2 because even looking back at last year, he still had a decent season, but you drafted him in the first round. You were very, very disappointed in the production that he had. There was like a 3 or 4 game stretch where he didn't get over like 10 points in fantasy, which is super frustrating for your first round pick. You don't expect that floor to be so low for a guy like Saquon Barkley. But Saquon Barkley coming into this offense with a new year, and we don't know what's going to happen with AJ Brown. He's probably going to get traded to the Patriots. That's the big speculation right now. So there's going to be a lot more room for him to be great again. But again, you can't rely on that so much because you do have Jalen Hurts there who will ultimately take his red zone production. We see it every year after year, whether they're on the 1 yard line, the 2 yard line. The tush push is a thing. Most people hate it. Some people love it. It's very mixed feelings on the tush push. I am one that hates it. I'll admit that. I think it's one of the worst plays in football. I think it's very boring. It takes no skill to fall forward for a couple inches to gain a first down or whatever the case may be. But you have a guy like Saquon Barkley in the backfield. I feel like they should just use him more, but he still is a system driver, which is why he falls into the tier 2 category of running backs. The last guy that I want to talk about in tier 2, I have Jonathan Taylor here. A lot of people are going to question this one too. Probably he should be a tier 1 guy, but it's not about the production that they had last year. I know Jonathan Taylor had like 1,500 yards rushing last year. He had a ton of touchdowns. I think he had like 18 touchdowns total. But for Jonathan Taylor, he still gets a lot of red zone stuff taken too. Daniel Jones, we saw run the ball a lot. They really like what they're seeing out of him, which is why they re-signed him. I know he's coming off the injury as well, so it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts. But I have him in tier 2 right now because he could really borderline tier 1 and tier 2. But especially with the departure of Michael Pittman, they used the franchise tag on Alec Pierce, or extended him, or whatever they did. Either way, he's their top receiver now. Michael Pittman's gone. They have Tyler Warren still. So I think tier 2 is really a fitting spot for Jonathan Taylor. Yes, they're probably going to run the ball, but he's also getting up there in age. So age plays a factor into where these guys sit in their tiers. But yeah, these are my system drivers. Again, we have Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Ashton Jeanty, Amarian Hampton, Breece Hall. Moving on to tier 3. A lot of names in this one as well. Tier 3 are my production traps. Okay. What I mean by production traps are, these are guys that you think should have a lot of yards. They're limited by the offense around them. Okay. Prime example, I have Chase Brown in tier 3. I have Javonte Williams in tier 3. Kyron Williams in tier 3. James Conner, Bucky Irving, Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne. These are my tier 3 guys. These are my production traps because these are the guys that I think probably should have a lot more yards than they actually do. Chase Brown being the biggest one. He had a great season last year as the focal point of the offense. Joe Burrow gets hurt. He was used a lot in the passing game. He had some decent rushing yards. Chase Brown ended up just over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had a lot more passing yards. I don't have the receiving stats pulled up right now, but in an offense with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, the production trap is real. Okay, you're gonna think that just because he's a starting running back in the league means that he's gonna run for 1,700 yards. It's just not gonna happen. The only way for that to happen is, again, it's very possible for Joe Burrow to get hurt again. If he breaks a nail, he's going to be out for 7 games. I I don't think he's played a full season yet since he's been in the NFL, which is insane for a guy that was drafted so high. In a to me, a very, very boring offense. Zach Taylor runs a freaking snooze fest over there in Cincinnati. Everything is just huck it to Jamar Chase. He's down there somewhere type of deal, regardless of who is playing quarterback. So I don't want these guys they're safe picks, but they're also kind of trap picks as well. A guy like Chase Brown, who had a decent season as the number one running back in Cincinnati, just kind of fell short a little bit for me, which is why I rank him in tier 3. Josh Jacobs is another guy. We know what he can do. We saw some injury with him late in the season. He ended up with less than 1,000 yards rushing. But the Packers offense is heavily reliant on Jordan Love and their very, very young receivers. They have Christian Watson. Matthew Golden should have a breakout season this year. We saw them lose Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks, but they filled it in with some other guys. Of course, I don't do any research on the show, so I'd have to go back and look at the list. But for the most part, Josh Jacobs is in that production trap. He's going to be a very touchdown-dependent running back like he was last year. He ended with 13 touchdowns, which really kind of saved a lot of his weeks fantasy production-wise. He could really be a trap for everybody. I love Josh Jacobs. I'm a huge fan of him. I liked him when he was with the Raiders. I like that he went over to the Packers. It's a really good fit for him, but at the same time, he falls into the production trap category in my tier 3 list. That he's going to be really, really dependent on touchdowns again. The other guy I have, Javonte Williams. This is another guy that is really going to be kind of backseated because they have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Dak Prescott's throwing the ball to Lamb, Pickens, and Ferguson, their tight end. Javonte Williams had a really good season. Well, we saw him be able to carry the load of a RB1 in the league. He ended with 1,200 yards rushing with like 11 touchdowns, which is fantastic for a running back. Got some really good production out of him, but he is still a production trap, especially because we don't really know how it's going to fare between CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. We saw George Pickens kind of take over the number one role. I know CeeDee kind of had some injury issues throughout the season, but for the most part, we're really looking at kind of a passing attack offense there in Dallas. I see Javonte Williams kind of relieving some of that pressure, but I don't see him breaking over that 1,200 yard rushing mark this year. He's going to be another touchdown dependent guy to where that could look really good on fantasy football stat sheets. Sure, if you see a double digit touchdowns, that's always a good sign. It means you're getting points, but he's a guy that will fall into the production trap category in tier 3. Another guy I have is Travis Etienne. Yes, I said Etienne. I know it looks like ETN, but he corrected everybody. It is Travis Etienne. Kind of crazy to me that he comes out and changes his name after 3-4 years in the league where everybody's been calling him ETN. But that's a story for another day, I guess. He goes over to the Saints from the Jaguars, and we saw him have a really good season with Jacksonville, which was kind of crazy that they actually let him go. But he also sits behind Alvin Kamara as it sits on the depth chart right now, this very minute. Etienne had a really good season. We're looking at, let's see if I can find him on the list here. Travis Etienne, he had 1,100 yards rushing with 7 touchdowns. That's pretty good production from your running back, especially in this tier. He's going to be a touchdown dependent guy. I think they still believe in Alvin Kamara, even though he's getting up there in age. And I think I have Kamara on my list in one of these tier lists, but we'll get to that. He's going to be a production trap. I could see him taking over the starting role over Kamara because Kamara's getting up there in age. We saw him Really slow down, and of course they had some QB struggles. I think they finally found something in Tyler Shuck. I know I have a buddy of mine who's a huge Saints fan. He'll tell you that Shuck is the truth. I'm pretty sure he's in a dynasty league. I get updates from my cousin Chaz, who's also in the same dynasty league. I'm pretty sure is 40 or 50% of his roster is all Saints players, which is crazy. But Achane is going to be one of those production trap guys that you're going to think that he's going to do well, but they're still going to rely heavily on Kamara. But it really just depends. I think Achane could really take over the number one position in New Orleans. Kyren Williams is on my tier 3 production trap list only because of Blake Corum. They've kind of established a 50-50 split there in LA. Of course, you have a really high-powered offense. Matt Stafford. You have Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua on the outside. They have some really good tight ends in Tyler Higbee and Cody Parkinson, who really showed some good stuff last year. They made it to the playoffs again. You saw Matt Stafford win the MVP of the league. Takes the title away from Josh Allen. Sad to see, but I love Matt Stafford as well. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league. He always has been. Even in Detroit, he had a really bad situation in Detroit. But Kyren Williams is my production trap guy because he's going to be a really touchdown dependent guy. Now he did rush for over 1,200 yards with 10 touchdowns, but we really saw Blake Corum kind of eat into that production a little bit. I think it could have been a lot more, and I think they're really kind of gearing up for Blake Corum to eventually take over for Kyren Williams when his contract is up. But for the most part, Kyren Williams falls into that production trap. You don't want to get lost in a guy that is the starter, yes, but also then a 50-50 split with another guy. That's never a good sign. James Conner is another production trap guy. Has had really good seasons with Arizona. They draft Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, though. James Conner has always been a touchdown-dependent running back. He's never really had crazy good seasons. Let me see where he ended up in the list here. If I can go to James Conner. I know he ended up getting hurt as well. But in years past, he's been a really heavy touchdown-dependent guy. He could be another guy that falls into the production trap. Plus, they also signed Tyler Algier, who is also a really good running back. Had a 1,000-yard season in Atlanta. They kind of filtered him in with Bijan Robinson a little bit. I was looking for the word there. There's a different word that I wanted to use in filter, but for the most part, James Conner is really kind of on the inside looking out, if you will. They draft Jeremiah Love. They signed Tyler Algier. James Conner's coming off an injury again. But he is one of those guys where, yes, he's the starter. Very touchdown dependent guy. We're going to see him kind of fall to the wayside a little bit. I think Jeremiah Love has the ability to overtake him. I even think Tyler Algier could overtake him sooner rather than later. I know the official depth chart that is released right now on ESPN. They have Jeremiah Love as their starter. They have Tyler Algier as their backup, and they have James Conner as their third running back. I don't see it that way. I think they're very committed to James Conner, but yeah, he's a production trap guy. He's a very touchdown dependent guy, especially with no Kyler Murray anymore. They're looking to see where their quarterback play is going to be, whether they go with Jacoby Brissett or I've heard rumblings that Aaron Rodgers might sign there. Who knows what Aaron Rodgers is doing? He's in a dark room somewhere, figuring out his life, I guess. The next name I have on my tier 3 production trap list is Bucky Irving, which might be a little bit lower than people expect, especially with Rachaad White now going to the Commanders. I have Bucky Irving here because Baker Mayfield's a gunslinger. Okay, their offense is solely revolving around Baker Mayfield and his ability as a quarterback. They lose Mike Evans in the offseason. They still have Egbuka as their number one wide receiver. They still have Chris Godwin. They have oh my God, I can't remember their tight end's name. Holy cow, I'm a terrible host. Kate Otten. We got there, but Bucky Irving is a guy that could probably be a borderline tier 2 guy, depending on how they want to run their offense. I can see that happening. Another guy I have on here, production traps, is Tony Pollard. Now the Titans didn't get Jeremiah Love, obviously, because he went just before them to the Cardinals. But Tony Pollard had a really good end of the season last year. He could be a guy that really shocks people, which is why I put him in tier 3 as opposed to like tier 4, tier 5. He's still a starter. He's still going to get his looks. Cam Ward is still progressing as a quarterback. They get Calvin Ridley back on offense. They drafted Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, which Ohio State produces some crazy good wide receivers, as you can see in like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin, guys like that. But for the most part, Tony Pollard, he could really be a driving force to an offense. We saw him have a really good season in Dallas before he went over to Tennessee, but he was also behind Zeke Elliott before he went over there. But Tony Pollard is on my tier 3 list. My production trap guy, my last guy that I have in my tier is Chuba Hubbard, Carolina running back. We saw him kind of fall to the wayside to Rico Dowdle, who took over when he got hurt. Had some back-to-back 200-yard rushing games. We saw Bryce Young kind of really sling the ball the last half of the season. Carolina comes out. I think Bryce Young threw for like 5 touchdowns in like back-to-back games or something like that. But Chuba Hubbard is another production trap guy. He's either going to be really good for them or he's going to be really bad for them. I don't want anybody to fall into that draft mess of, I should draft a starting running back here in Chuba Hubbard. They still have some guys behind him. I can't remember their rookies. Jonathan something. Like I said, I don't do any research on the show. We're just kind of winging it off the top of my head. But Chuba Hubbard falls in this category. He's going to be another guy that's pretty touchdown dependent. We saw Tet McMillan win Rookie of the Year. They have Xavier Legette. They have Jalen Coker. They have some really good pieces on offense that Chuba Hubbard could really strive. He very well could become a driving force of an offense, but he falls into tier 3. He's one of those roller coaster guys that is going to be, one week is going to be up here, next week is going to be down here, next week is going to be up here, down, and it's just going to be one of those things where you're going to fall victim to drafting a guy like that. Moving on to tier 4. Tier 4 is my insurance policies tier. These are guys that are safe picks. They're on the borderline of not becoming a starter. They have some young guys behind them that could take their job very easily, but they're guys that have had solid production in the past. We have Ramondre Stevenson, we have J.K. Dobbins, we have Aaron Jones, Rashad White, and Alvin Kamara. This is where Alvin Kamara comes into play because they did sign Travis Etienne. Kamara's up there in age. We saw his production. Of course, that was affected by mediocre quarterback play, but I think they did find something in Tyler Shuck. So Alvin Kamara is listed as the starter. He's a safe bet. He's probably gonna have a really low floor, a mid-tier ceiling where he's gonna go off. But if Travis Etienne comes in and dominates, that's gonna be the last that we see of Alvin Kamara. He's probably gonna retire after this season. And let Etienne kind of do his thing. Rashad White leaves Tampa Bay, goes to the Commanders. And we saw Rashad White lose the starting job to Bucky Irving in Tampa Bay. They kind of had a 50-50 split till they figured out, like, okay, they really have something in Bucky Irving here. So Bucky Irving is in my production trap tier, my tier 3. My insurance policy is, yes, he's the starter. In Washington, they have Terry McLaurin. They did not re-sign Deebo Samuel. He's a free agent, so really their only wide receiver is Terry McLaurin. You see, Jaden Daniels is going to come back from his injury. He's going to be the focal point of that offense, and what he can do if he can get back to his rookie season form for the Commanders. He's a safe play. He's an insurance policy. He's a starter. He's gonna have a high floor. Maybe his ceiling is probably a little bit lower, but Rachaad White to me is a very good running back. But he falls into that tier 4 category, to where there's a guy behind him that is looking on is on the up and up. Again, same deal with Aaron Jones. He's getting up there in age. He's like 34 years old. He's the Minnesota running back. There's a guy behind him that could take his position. We saw him be a starter. Jordan Mason is who I'm talking about. Jordan Mason took over when Christian McCaffrey was injured for like 10 or 11 games 2 seasons ago. Ran very well, which is why he got the nod over in Minnesota. But of course they signed Aaron Jones, so it's one of those things where we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But he's a safe pick. Same deal with J.K. Dobbins. They have him listed as the starter in Denver. He's had some injury issues in the past, but he had a pretty decent season. Without that injury, he was pretty good. The last guy I have on this list, Rhamondre Stevenson. He's been the Patriots starter for a few years now. They draft TreVeyon Henderson 2 years ago. He was a rookie last year, had a decent season, kind of lost the job in the playoffs. Rhamondre Stevenson kind of solidified that. But he falls into my tier 4 because he's a safe pick. They're going to run the ball, but he's got a guy breathing down his neck, to where TreVeyon Henderson is probably going to be a higher pick than Rhamondre Stevenson in fantasy football drafts. We're looking at, an offense that may or may not trade for A.J. Brown, so they're going to look for Drake May to throw the ball a lot. Like I said, Rhamondre Stevenson's a guy who's got a high floor, maybe a low ceiling, but if you're looking for a safe pick, if you need a flex guy, these are the guys that you're looking at. Which brings me to my next tier. My tier 5 are my leverage plays. These are the guys that you're looking at could take over the starting position in their respective offenses. Jeremiah Love, Rico Dowdle, Blake Corum, TreVeyon Henderson, Cam Scatterbo, Kyle Monangai, Bill Krosky-Merritt, Jordan Mason, Tajay Spears. These guys are my leverage guys, and I know there's a ton more running backs that I didn't put on this list. If there's anybody that you can think of, leave a comment down below, and I'm happy to discuss who I didn't talk about, guys like Jaylen Warren, Quinshon Judkins, stuff like that. I really wasn't sure where to put those guys as far as my tiered list goes. Jaylen Warren, honestly, I could probably put into like a production trap guy, because I'm going to talk about Rico Dowdle in this section, leverage guys that could be the starter. We're going to start with Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love, rookie out of Notre Dame, goes to Arizona. Really explosive back, probably the best running back in the draft for sure. And we see a guy like James Conner kind of shaking in his boots a little bit. Guy that is often injured, can't stay healthy. Like I said, they signed Tyler Algier from Atlanta. Jeremiah Love could be that guy that comes in and starts halfway through the season. He's definitely a good stash pick. He's probably a good keeper pick if you can get him late. I could see Jeremiah Love going pretty high in drafts. If you've watched any of my episodes or been on stream or what it might be. I'm not a big fan of rookies. I like to see what they can do, and then I can assess from there. But we saw Jeremiah Love be pretty explosive at Notre Dame. I could see him taking the starting position at any point for the Arizona Cardinals. My next guy that I mentioned, Rico Dowdle. We saw him really take control of the Carolina Panthers backfield while Chuba Hubbard was out with injury. I could see the same happening in Pittsburgh. Mike McCarthy's the head coach over there now, and he's historically been a guy that really focuses on his number one running back. If he thinks you're the number one running back, you're going to get the ball. Jaylen Warren is great out of the backfield. He had a decent season. He had just under 1,000 yards rushing, maybe like 300-400 yards receiving. But we saw them rely on Kenneth Gainwell in the passing game. He's not a guy that had a lot of yards, but we saw him challenge for the starting position over in Pittsburgh. I can see the same exact thing happening for Rico Dowdle. He might not be the best catching running back out of the backfield that there is out there, but this guy can run hard. Like I said, we saw him have back-to-back 200-yard rushing games on the Carolina Panthers last year. So this guy is in my leverage play guy, my tier 5 list that could really take over the starting position. Another guy I mentioned already, Blake Corum. TreVeyon Henderson, kind of in the same position. Now we know that Kyren Williams is a starter in LA for the Rams, but we saw them kind of shift to like a 60-40 split. Blake Corum saw a lot of time last year, and this is a guy that you should be on the lookout for when you're drafting Kyren Williams. If you draft Kyren Williams, I would definitely want to try and get Blake Corum as his handcuff, because Blake Corum is a guy that could eventually be the starting running back for the Rams. Same with TreVeyon Henderson. If you draft Ramondre Stevenson, which you'll probably see Henderson go first anyway, but in any case, whoever you draft first, TreVeyon Henderson could take over that starting position. Now, here's one that might be a little concerning for a lot of people. Cam Skattebo is in my leverage plays. We saw him have a really good season, derailed by an ankle injury. We think that he probably solidified his starting position, but with Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary behind him, those guys are very capable in the Giants offense. Now that they have John Harbaugh as their head coach, they're going to be a very run-heavy team. We saw some really good things out of Jackson Dart, which was still crazy to me that they fired Brian Daboll mid-season, because they saw some success with Dart and Skattebo. Now they were very, very hindered by the Malik Neighbors injury, but he's coming back from injury and he'll be ready to go for week 1. That's going to play a huge factor into the running game in New York. Cam Skattebo had a very, very good season, minus the injury, of course. So he's a guy that we can look to probably take over the starting position at some point. Kyle Monangai is another guy out of Chicago. DeAndre Swift is a guy. He's another guy that I couldn't really place anywhere. If I were to place anywhere, he'd probably be in my tier 3 production trap category. Maybe an insurance policy. Probably teetering on 3 and 4, tier 3 and 4. But Kyle Monangai is the better north-south runner than DeAndre Swift was. We saw Monangai come in and play very, very well when Swift was hurt. That's a guy that has some leverage on his successor, if you will. Monangai can come in and be the starting running back in that offense. Bill Krosky-Merritt, like I said, we saw Rachaad White go to the Commanders, but Krosky-Merritt kind of took over as the injuries piled up for the Commanders, and believe me, they had a lot of injuries, and McLaurin and Daniels and Austin Eckler got hurt in the beginning of the season, and Chris Rodriguez is now gone. He's in Jacksonville, listed as like their third running back, which we're going to get to in a little bit here. But our leverage guys, Krosky-Merritt could be a guy that takes over the starting role. As long as everybody can stay healthy on the Commanders, they're going to be looking to run the ball a lot. Take some pressure off of Jaden Daniels, take some pressure off of Terry McLaurin. Jordan Mason is another guy that I mentioned who sits behind Aaron Jones in Minnesota. He's a young running back who played very, very well in San Francisco when Christian McCaffrey had his 10-game absence the year before last. Jordan Mason is a guy that could take over the starting position over an aging Aaron Jones. The last guy I have on my list might be a little bit of a shock is Tyjae Spears. He's a really good pass catching running back. He didn't really have too much time. He was injured a lot last year too, but we saw Tony Pollard kind of solidify his starting position. But Tyjae Spears is a really good complement to Tony Pollard, and Tyjae Spears could become the starting running back in Tennessee. That kind of winds down my tier 5, my leverage plays, my guys that are not starters, but eventually, probably sooner than you think, become the starter in their respective offenses. Which brings me to my last tier, my tier 6, my ascending assets. Bashal Tutin and his backup, LeQuint Allen Jr. We saw Travis Etienne leave Jacksonville and go to New Orleans. Tutin had a really good season behind Etienne. Excuse me. We could see the Jacksonville offense really kind of getting back to running the football. Tutin he's a solid player. He's definitely ascending on the rankings list. And I'm not saying he should be like your running back 1 or 2, but if you're late in a draft and you need a bench guy, I'm definitely putting Tutin on my bench. Excuse me. Especially after last season, what I saw from the running game from the Jacksonville Jaguars, whether it would be Trevor Lawrence running the ball or Etienne running the ball. Another guy I have in my ascending asset is Emmett Johnson. Emmett Johnson, where did he got drafted? Let's see. Emmett Johnson gets drafted to the Chiefs. He is probably one Ken Walker injury away from being the starting running back. So his ascension to the top is one Ken Walker injury away. Another guy I have on here I mentioned before is Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy is an ascending guy, especially if Cam Scatterbo is not ready to go for the beginning of the season. Tracy had a really good year. He's a guy that the Giants trust, and we know that John Harbaugh wants to run the ball down people's throats. It's what he does. Another guy I mentioned earlier too is Tyler Algier, who's really a very underrated running back in my opinion. Had 1,000 yards in Atlanta. They draft Bijan Robinson. He kind of takes over really early. Obviously, he was one of the highest rated running backs out of that draft class, out of college in general. Came from Texas, but Tyler Algier could be a guy that could be on a lot of people's radars for the most part. But yeah, that kind of rounds out my tier list. And like I said, I know there's a ton of running backs that I missed. If you made it this far in the video, I'd love to hear from you to see where you guys think that people should be. Let me know if my tiers are right, if my tiers are wrong. I'd love to hear from you. That rounds out this episode of the Front Office Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Pistols. We did the running back tier. Next episode will be Sunday. I believe I'm debating on if I want to do wide receivers. I probably do wide receivers next. I think we'll do wide receivers next. But again, this has been another episode of the Front Office Podcast. I'm your host, Pistols. Catch me every Sunday, every Tuesday, live on Twitch here, Pistols Live HQ. Check out the YouTube channel, also Pistols Live HQ. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I'll catch you guys on the next episode.